Do you have any addictions? If you'd have asked me that 4 years ago, I would have very likely said no, I don't have any addictions. Fast forward to today, I learned a few things. So I did not realize that I was addicted to sugar. And the way that I figured that out actually was quite interesting because I stumbled upon a piece of information that helped me to. So let's go through the story. I had a hip issue. And then in my attempt to solve my hip issue, I ended up realizing that I had an inflammation issue. And the only reason I figured this out is because I originally thought that my hip was hurting because I was overweight. And so my first thought was lose some weight. And I did all the things. I went walking. I couldn't do all the things because my hip was hurting me so bad. I couldn't do much exercise, but I was walking a lot. And what ended up happening is I walked for 6 months and I didn't lose even a pound, first of all, which was very disappointing to me. I was eating really good because I was trying to lose weight. And the walking, though, showed me that this is not a weight issue. The walking helped my hip to feel better, even if not completely better. So I went from not being able to sit in a chair, like what I'm doing right now, for anywhere more than 45 minutes, to being able to sit for 3 hours. And so that told me there was something else happening. I went online, I started to do some research, I started to understand that I had inflammation in my hip. Okay. And then I started to try to figure out, well, how do you solve inflammation? And I found that inflammation was caused by excessive amounts of sugar. So I thought, at first I thought it was strange because I'd never heard that before. But once I convinced myself that that really did seem to be the answer and that every medical and /scientific and / place I looked, it seemed to be saying, yes, sugar causes inflammation. I thought, oh my gosh, how easy of an answer this is going to be. I just stopped eating sugar until I started to try to do it. So how did I find out that I was addicted to sugar? When I tried to stop eating sugar, and I was hardcore because my hip, right? I by the way, for those of you that don't know, I sit with clients for a living, and I usually have at least 3 appointments in a row. So I needed to be able to sit for 3 hours easily. I was sitting for 3 hours barely. So taking the sugar out was a no-brainer. And then I tried to do it. Can I just tell you? Day 1 was fine. Day 2 was okay. Day 3 and 4 were tremendously difficult to get through. I was starving, even though I was eating. I was eating what I thought was enough. And I was eating often. So I was starving. I had massive headache. I felt like my body felt not great. Like at sensations that Wellness Warriors, it was insane how I was feeling. So, okay. When I looked up what this was, I realized that I had gone through withdrawal. I was addicted to sugar and I didn't even know. And now the question becomes, is it possible that you're addicted to something and you don't? Well, apparently, yes, it's possible to be addicted to something, me, and not even have a clue. Now, I know a lot of people will say to me, the people who know me will say, oh, but Violet, you kind of did like really love chocolate and I would jokingly, I remember in my history, jokingly call myself, ha ha ha, I'm a chocoholic, ha ha ha. Not really understanding how very close to true that was, but it wasn't just chocolate. It was sugar. Question. Are you addicted to sugar? And now, when I tell my story, I get 2 reactions. I get the reaction of some people to go, I don't think I'm addicted to sugar. I don't chase chocolate or candy or any. So I don't eat junk kind of answer. So how could I be addicted to sugar? I don't eat junk. Or I've gone weeks on end without eating sugar. Junk food, right? I've gone weeks without eating junk food. We're going to come back to that one because that one's super important. Because I can tell you that I had gone weeks on end without eating chocolate. I had gone, because I had thought to myself, God, you're overdoing it. You shouldn't be eating this much chocolate. And I'd gone weeks, even months at some occasions without eating chocolate. And still I was addicted to sugar and didn't know. The truth is, we've never truly tried to stop eating sugar. And that's part of the reason that we don't know that we can't stop eating it. Now, sugar is actually in most healthy foods. So, cereal, and there are a lot of cereals in the food aisles that have that healthy check mark on them that imply that this is healthy, terrific to eat. Now, I know my wellness warriors know that cereal is not a great source of anything, but there's a lot of people that are unaware that cereal is a box of sugar. We have most of the grains, barley, rice. I remember growing up, my dad bought barley for us to have all the time. It's healthy, right? It's a whole grain. There's so many of them, buckwheat, that we are encouraged to eat because their whole grains are healthy. They're sugar. And if we don't understand that these things are sugars, fruit's another great example. And fruit's even more tricky because not only is it sugar, but fruit is half fructose, which is even more damaging to the body than just straight sugar. But, in my effort to stop eating sugar, did I take fruit off the radar? Well, I did when I did it this time, but in my history, when I was trying to be healthy, fruit was increased whenever I was trying to be healthy. We're so unaware. Of course, there's the vegetables that we eat because we're encouraged to eat. Those are sugar. And all vegetables are sugars. We need to be clear on that, right? All fruits, all vegetables are sources of sugar. Dairy is a source of sugar. And obviously I'm making this list. I can't not put my favorite nut there. Cashews, but all nuts have some level of sugar. So if sugar is in every healthy thing that we are eating, then can we actually say that we've ever really tried to stop eating sugar? And then what happens when you really do stop, right? What happens when you take it out and it's not there? You just don't have it anymore. Well, this is what happened to me, right? I had keto flu. And when you talk about going into a ketogenic lifestyle, they warn you about keto flu. And I don't understand why we are pretending that keto flu isn't what it is. It's withdrawal. Now, I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm going to go through the list of what are actually withdrawal symptoms, and then we'll see how many of those things did I have. So when you are engaged in withdrawal, most people have a change in appetite. I was extremely hungry. Most people have a change in mood. I was moody. I was like, I felt like I wasn't able to manage small things that were happening around me. Most people are irritable. I was irritable. You're tired. I was tired on the second day of my withdrawal. I was tired. Now, muscle pain, I did not have. Nausea, I did not have. Restlessness, the night's sleep on day 3 and 4 were not great for me. Shakiness, I don't remember having. Sweating, I don't remember having. Tremors, I don't remember having. I did not vomit. Headache. It was crazy, the headache that I had. Now, is this a complete list? Probably not. But this is the largest list that I could find of things, and I had about half of them from stopping sugar. Wellness warriors, we need to really think about what that means, right? If you have withdrawal, that means that you were dependent on whatever you stopped taking. What I stopped taking was sugar. And so let's go back to that idea of, well, I'm not addicted because I could stop eating it for, weeks on end. When you take a break from anything that you're doing repeatedly, but you know that you're going to go back to it, that's easy to do. And we do it. We see people who have drinking problems do this to prove to their families that it's not a problem. And they will really go 2, 3, 4 weeks without drinking because there's knowledge. I'll do it soon. And honestly, even though sometimes I went months without having any chocolate, there was this knowledge that I could have it whenever I wanted to, right? I was choosing this. But what's interesting is that as soon as I touched it, I couldn't stop having it. So the part that's really difficult for most of us to understand is the catalyst to put it down usually is either myself, which for me it was me saying, why am I eating this much chocolate? Like this is too much. This is not normal. Or someone else saying, hey, that's a lot of drinking you're doing and you're trying to prove a point. But there's always that knowledge that at some point I will pick it up again. Now, if I was dependent, that means that I didn't have control over how much I was having. And that I did see. That's what stopped me from taking it. Now, when people are being told and they're trying to prove something, they still haven't acknowledged that piece of the puzzle. They still haven't acknowledged that you don't have control over how much you're having. And I want us to think about eating meals because we have this false sense of control. This is another thing I want to point out when it came to chocolate. When I stopped taking chocolate, I didn't stop taking carbohydrates. And if I'm being completely transparent with you guys, which I like to do, on the times that I didn't have chocolate, was I still eating cookies? Was I still eating, bananas? I did actually, of all the fruits you could possibly like, I liked, which one? The sweetest one, bananas. Was I still eating cereal? Was I still eating in my supper, rice, pasta, potatoes, carrots? I had an abundance of sugar that was still coming in. So, in fact, my ability to put down chocolate and put it down so easily actually came from the fact that although that was my preferred sugar delivery system, it was not my only sugar delivery system. So we have this false sense of control because we think that by stopping this thing, I'm proving something. But in fact, I've been doing the thing for so long that I hadn't realized how many different avenues I had to get to the same landing spot. Now, that false sense of control does really make us believe that I could stop at any time. And I wasn't making that up. I truly did believe I could stop at any time. And I truly did believe that not eating chocolate for months on end meant something. Where now I look back and I realize that the same way that as soon as I touched it again, I was out of control, like other people with whatever it is, drinking or substances, you touch it again, you're out of control. That's what actually meant something. The dopamine pathway. Dopamine helps us because that positive it gives us reinforces behaviors. It gets us to do good things. but it can also get us to do things that are less than ideal. Example, eating chocolate every day, eating chocolate multiple times a day. That was dopamine and other neurotransmitters that was allowing me to engage this behavior the way that I was engaging it. And now dopamine also has an impact on what should we not do, because it reinforces good behavior, and it can also reinforce a dislike of something. Now, if I like what I'm doing, so in this case, eating chocolate, and then I don't eat it, dopamine, the lack of dopamine, will also push me to go get some chocolate so I can release some. So that pathway that we have for dopamine has such a huge role in keeping behavior present, whether that behavior is good for me or not. I want us to think about something else, though. It was years that I was on this path of reinforcing this dopamine pathway, years. So that means that overcoming this pathway that I created for myself will take years. And for the wellness warriors that have watched many of my videos, you'll notice that there are occasions when, for example, I eat nuts, and that sugar, because there's sugar in nuts, especially the ones that I love, cashews, gets triggered, and then the pathway is just there. And the reality that I did overeat nuts in those scenarios because, right? The pathway was re-engaged and I'm running on it. It's important for us to understand that we can't just overcome the pathway that easily, it doesn't disappear, and we can't just say, oh, put a better behavior there. I hear that so often. Oh, if you're doing this bad behavior, just replace it with this good behavior. And then we end up doing a good behavior in a inappropriate way, right? Because we're doing the behavior to get the hit of dopamine, not because the behavior is good. We see this a lot of people who, so for example, if I switch eating to exercise, but now I'm like going nuts in the gym because I'm trying to get that high. Sometimes I see people that they put down eating and they don't even try to replace it with anything, but don't notice that, drinking came into its place, or, video games came into its place, or, scrolling on my phone came into its place, or, right? And it's so easy to replace because as long as whatever you end up doing releases dopamine, the pathway is still being engaged, and you will still continue to get that high that your body and that you are looking for. I want us to keep in mind that because dopamine will always be present, because it has to be present, because it helps us to do other things. Like I can pick up this pen because of dopamine. Dopamine allows for that coordination and then the signaling and to make this a possible action that Violet can do. So there's a lot of people talking about dopamine detox. And I want us to understand that it's not possible to detox from dopamine, because dopamine will be in your system because our body creates dopamine. If you try to suppress it, your body's just going to make more of it. Like it's supposed to be there. Otherwise, I couldn't do this. Right? So then what we really need to do is, rather than trying to detox dopamine, we really are focusing on having the right amount of dopamine. And in order to have the right amount of dopamine, it means that I'm not creating new situations where I'm going to chase. So if I'm not creating new situations where I'm going to chase, how is Violet going to feel good? Because the chasing is in that pathway because we're trying to land in the spot where Violet feels good. And guess what? The answer actually is solving the real problems that are happening in your life. I know that sounds simple. It's actually extremely hard. That's why most people don't do it, right? There's a reality that when something happens at work, something happens in your relationship, something happens in your friend group or your social world, if you are no longer able to do your hobbies or just haven't figured out what hobby you really want or what interests you, these issues cause us to feel bad. And then we engage the pathway to make ourselves feel better. The problem is that's not the answer. But it does give us this false sense of control, again, because we feel like, oh, look how I took care of me. I made myself feel better. But wellness warriors, I know for those of you who are trying to lose weight, when you end up eating something and feeling bad, you don't actually end up feeling like you took care of yourself, right? In the moment of eating it, it tasted good and you did get that dopamine hit, but then you felt bad. And then unfortunately, to feel better, what do we end up doing? Eating something else. This example, I could use it for other things, like we have this false sense of control because we tell ourselves stories, right? Like, I'm having trouble in my social group, so now I don't have anyone to hang out with. And all of a sudden, the story starts to be, well, I like to be alone anyways. I prefer being by myself, right? I lose interest in my job, or it's not working the way I want. And all of a sudden, well, work is just about money anyways. Understand, I'm at work, or the average person's at work 8 hours out of their day. If I'm there 8 hours out of my day, is it okay for me to just, it's just for money? 8 hours is a long time to do anything just for. I want us to solve the problems. And part of solving the problem is looking at the way that you talk to you. Is looking at the way that you attack problems. It's looking at your belief that you could find a solution. If I tell myself this doesn't matter, I won't try to fix it. However, that thing that I'm saying doesn't matter is still causing me to feel bad. And I feel that. And I self-soothe with, whether it's food or drink or video games, or I'm engaging that dopamine pathway. And it's getting stronger and stronger every time that I engage it. We engage our addictions because we're trying to escape hating our life. And wellness warriors, what I want you to do is address the real issues so that you can truly be happy. Wellness warriors, I'm always so happy that you guys come back. And everybody who's new, welcome. Ring that bell so that you can get on the road to health. I make these videos every Monday, mind-blowing Mondays. Can't wait to talk to you guys again next week.